Hi guys, Michael here. Today I thought I'd share with you my tip on getting the perfect crust on your steak. Now I love cooking steak over charcoal on a barbecue, in a griddle pan, but another great way of cooking steak is just in a pan and then basting it in butter with some thyme and garlic in that butter to give you a really nice flavour. And what that butter does is give you that really even brown crust all over your steak. So I'll show you today how to do it. And the first thing we need to do is get some beautiful steaks. Now, for me, my favourite steak is a Scotch fillet. Really important with cooking steak and any meat, get it out your fridge a little bit early. You bring it up to room temperature so that it gets up to its cooking cuisson, which is its temperature on the inside. So these have been out for about half an hour, and that's the best way to get your meat up to temp and give yourself a chance of cooking it really well every time. Now, I like to cook in a cast iron pan, but you can use a stainless steel pan as well. You want something that'll hold the heat and retain the heat really well. Now, with seasoning steak, I'm a simple guy. It's oil and salt. And I'm gonna add literally a 10-cent piece worth of oil. And with clean hands, just gonna brush that oil onto my steak, just so I've got enough to coat it. I don't want too much oil in my pan that's gonna spit too early. And then I go a really generous sprinkling of flaky sea salt. It looks like a lot, and it is a lot, but most of that will fall off in the pan, so don't freak out. Now, you want a nice hot pan. Because our cast iron pans get really hot and the heat goes down the handle, make sure you've got a tea towel to hold them as well. And then we can go in, and that's the sound we're looking for, that beautiful sizzle. That's our pan talking to us and telling us it's ready. So that sort of sizzle and that intensity of sound is good. If you put it in, it was like smoking, really, really hot, intense sound. You can just move your cast iron off the heat for just 30 seconds. Because these hold so much heat, you're gonna retain the heat anyway, and then move it back on, or alternatively, just turn your heat down from a high heat to a medium high. And then, what we're gonna do at this stage is just feel for our steak. Now, I'm not gonna forcibly turn it, and at the moment it's still stuck a little bit, but I'm gonna let my steak almost become the non-stick element of this dish. Your steak will release when it's ready to turn, just like that. So just, as soon as you lift it lifts up without any resistance. You can give it its first turn. We're trying to get a nice even pink from edge to edge, and by turning it every little bit, that's a good way of doing it. Now we're getting a little bit hot here. You can see that the smoke's getting quite intense. I'm just gonna literally slide my pan off the heat for 2 seconds. We'll give that steak one more turn, and you can now see that we've got a nice browning and caramelisation starting in our steak, which for me is a good time to add in my butter. You want to really have that seal and that sear set up on the outside of your steak before you add your butter in. We're going to add about 50 grams of butter. And I've also got just a head of garlic. Give it a little crush just to break it open, and then just take 2 cloves of garlic, and then with your knife, you just want to give them a little smash. Bit of body weight and the heel of your hand. And then we want a little bit of thyme as well. Just thyme on the sprig, super simple. Again, our pan's gonna get a bit hot because we've used this cast iron. It's got stacks of residual heat, so I'm gonna add the butter in on the side. And you can see straight away that's gonna just smoke up and brown up. And then you wanna add your thyme in, and that's a really good sound. When you get that pop of the thyme popping, you know you're up to good temperature. And then you wanna grab a spoon. We can go back onto the heat now, and I'll push the steak to one side of the pan and then lean the pan towards myself. And all we're gonna do is just baste this caramelising brown butter over the top of our steak. Now, I use unsalted butter when cooking my steak because I've obviously seasoned steak quite generously at the start to get that caramelisation going. If you add in salted butter at this stage, it's not the end of the world, but you have less control with your seasoning. Now, you can see here, our butter is like a beautiful dark brown nutty colour, but it's not burnt. That's really important. So if it does start getting too hot again, just move it off the heat. Now we're going to turn our steak over really carefully, away from ourselves, and have a look at this caramelisation. That's what I'm going for with this basting technique. It's just super brown and delicious. Another 30 seconds of basting this side, and our steak's going to be ready to rest. Our steak is now ready. We've got that beautiful caramelisation and crust. Now, the most important thing with cooking your meat is resting it. So steak out to rest, and then I actually like to just keep all this butter and garlic and thyme with my steak just to help with the flavour. We cooked our steak for about 4 minutes, so we're going to rest it for, I usually say half the time, but you know what, let's go 3 minutes just to let it really rest. And then we can carve into our steak. We should have a nice medium rare steak with that beautiful brown crust on it. Our steak has been resting for about 3 minutes, which is perfect time to carve into this guy and see how well I've done. Onto your board. And now for the moment of truth. But you can see that beautiful dark brown crust we've achieved by doing the basting in the pan, which is exactly what I was going for. And now we're just gonna carve our steak. I like to carve into nice sort of just under 1 centimetre slices so that you get big strips of the steak. And there you have your steak carved. Now, I'll slide this onto a plate quickly, give that a nice little season with salt. And then you can just chuck on a few of these thyme sprigs because they add a heap more flavour as well. And there you go, guys. That is my steak basted in butter with thyme and garlic, a perfect way to cook a beautiful steak. And if you remember the tips that I gave you, you're gonna cook delicious steak like this. Give this one a go at home, guys, and let me know how you do.